I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Who the Son sets free, free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Oh, yes I am, Lord. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Sing it again. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken.
back. Let's start with a passage from the Bible tonight. If you have your Bibles, you can go with me to the book of Psalms. We're going to go to chapter 18. I'm going to read verses 1 through 6, and then I'll jump down a few verses to verse 16. Now, I know everybody here is not a Bible scholar, and I remember growing up and thinking, where in the world are these books in the Bible? And I would just be turning my pages like, I cannot find the book of Psalms. I have no idea where it is. And so I always try to help you along, give you some guidance. And so if you're not sure and you have your Bible with us, the book of Psalms is in the Old Testament. The Bible's made up of 2 testaments. It's in the Old, and the Old Testament makes up the first half of the Bible. If you go about halfway through the Old Testament, you'll find the book of what non-church people call Job, but we actually call it Job. And Psalms comes right after that. And then right before the book of Isaiah, you'll find the book of Psalms. So if you found your place there, I'm glad that you have. And if not, you can just follow along on the screen. The version that I read is New Revised Standard Version. And this is what the words say. It says, I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. Now, I just want to stop there a moment and say that there's believers in the world who, even though they believe in God, they believe that God has kind of existed up there and we're down here, and that God doesn't get involved in our daily lives. But this biblical writer is telling us that God gets involved in your daily lives. Like, this writer is saying that God is my fortress, the one who protects me. God is my rock, like the strong ground that I stand on. And so I want you to picture and know that this author is saying God is here with us. And so as we continue reading, because he knows this, he says, I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So I shall be saved from my enemies. Now, we know, as I just said, that this person believes that God is close, that God is involved in our daily lives, like present with us. But this person is also acutely aware that there's an enemy around us as well. Anybody else know that enemy? Like, it lurks just as close as God is with us because it wants to destroy us. And so this writer is saying, God is with me, my rock, my fortress, my stronghold, because he knows how important it is to have a God when there's so much around you that's trying to destroy you. And then he moves into a somber mode and says, the cords of death encompassed me. The torrents of perdition, they assailed me. The cords of Sheol, they entangled me. The snares of death confronted me. Now, there's a lot of words in there that probably don't make a whole lot of sense to you. But if I could simplify it for you, there's a couple images in there that we find, and one of those images is him describing himself as feeling like there's a tight rope around his neck. Like the enemy has come and tied him up. And then there's another example of the torrents have assailed me. It's like the ocean is engulfing him in their waves. Like, this is a moment where he feels low, like at the lowest of the lows. Like, all this stuff is happening to me is what he's saying. So then he says in verse 6, in my distress, I called upon the Lord. To my God, there's a lot of gods that exist. He says, to my God, I cried for help. And from God's temple, God heard my voice. And my cry to God reaches God's ear. And then check this out. It says, God reached down from on high. God took me, and God drew me out of those mighty waters. God reached down. We're starting a new series this weekend. And the series that we're starting this weekend is going to center around and be focused on just one word for the entire series that I want us to think about. And that word is reach. And tonight what I want to talk to you about is I want to talk to you about what I believe is the most important reach, the most important. Now, I'm so excited to talk to you about this, and I believe in this message so much that this week I've been thinking, like, how do I help this sink in for you? How do I help this message, like, go past your eyes and your ears into your brain and then sink down into your heart? Because I believe a message like this is something that we're all ripe and ready to hear. And I want you to hear it and receive it. And so what I've decided to do is to involve more than just your ears in hearing. I want you to involve a little bit more of your body, okay? So I want you to shake out your arms a little bit, and I'm going to ask you all to act weird, including you, Mandy. I'm going to ask all of you to act weird tonight and do something that doesn't feel so comfortable, but I want you to do it because I really want you to remember this message. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach you 3 movements. 3 movements, not like the one over here. Okay, he already did that. 3 movements. I want you to, with both arms and hands, I just want you to reach down. Just reach down. You don't have to bend over, just reach down. Okay? I want you to reach out. All right, got you all participating now. I want you to reach up. All right, so you don't forget, you can go back to normal position. I want to try it one more time. It's just an exercise. I want you to reach down. You're all good. Okay, reach out. Now reach up. Okay, you're good. Here's what we're going to do. I want you to explain to all of us or demonstrate to all of us which direction you would reach based on the question that I gave you using the 3 different movements. Like, I actually want you to do it together. And hopefully you all reach in the same direction. Okay? Where do you reach when your puppy has an accident on your newly cleaned floor? Nice. Okay, back to square one. Where do you reach when the pizza delivery shows up and they hand you the box? You like that one? All right. I want some pizza. Okay, where do you reach when you're trying to grab that secret stash of snacks that you put way up in the cabinet? You all have that stash too. That's right. Where do you reach when you're a toddler and you want your parents to pick you up and hold you? Okay. Where do you reach when you've come home from a long trip and you can't wait to embrace somebody that you've missed? It's getting sadder, isn't it? Where do you reach when you're standing next to a loved one in the hospital and they're laying on their bed and you just want them to know that you're there and that you care? Which direction do you reach? Where do you reach when a newborn baby is lying on their mattress or in their bed or on the floor and they're crying? Where do you reach? The most important reach is the one that extends down to you. Think about this with me. A baby's greatest need isn't food, clothing, shelter, or having their diaper changed, although those are critical if you're a parent. A new parent, those are critical. You can't skip all those. But it's not a baby's greatest need. A baby's greatest need is for somebody to reach down to it. That's a baby's greatest need. Now, as a teenager, reaching down to a baby is something that I never thought about. I never thought about it. As a boy, babies were aliens to me. Like, if somebody brought a baby into the room, it was like I didn't even see it because I was not interested in babies. And even into my 20s, I was somebody who avoided babies at all costs. Any other men in the room there with me when you were in your 20s? Like, a baby, that's not for me right now because I don't have my own. I'll just walk to the other side of the room. It was kind of one of those situations that would get awkward with me because people that we knew would have new babies and they would come up and Brooklyn would be like, "Oh, it's so cute." And they're like, "Do you want to hold the baby, Brooklyn?" And she would say, "Yes, of course." And then they would look at me and I would look away because I was afraid they were going to ask me to hold their baby. I didn't want to think about reaching down and holding a baby until I had my own. And then you have your own baby. I had my own baby, and then you learn a humble lesson. And this is what I learned. I learned that reaching down to a baby is critical to their health and growth. Without reaching down to a baby, they don't get fed. They don't get a bath. They don't get their diaper changed. Reaching down to a baby, it's how they... where and how they find security in their life. Here's the interesting part. None of us in the room when we were babies knew how to get our parents to reach down to us. None of us did. You might think, well, yeah, we did. We cried. But you cried out of discomfort. You cried like this. You're like, my diaper's full, and I'm getting a rash. Like, it feels hot. I don't like that. Or you would cry, my tummy hurts. I need some food. Or you cry. You like my crying, don't you? They cry much louder than that, by the way. I'm tired and I don't know how to make myself feel comfortable enough to go to sleep. Babies cry. That's all you did when you were a baby. You didn't know that crying would cause your parents to reach down to you. You just cried because you felt uncomfortable. Until you realized that when you cry, it actually causes your parents to reach down to you. You know, I wish that somebody would have taught me the big three before I became a parent. Do you all know the big three? The big three are, there's three main reasons why a baby cries. Because they're hungry, because they have a full diaper, or because they're tired. The big three, and I wish someone would have taught me sooner in my life. I'm teaching you boys something right now. You never know when you may have to use this. You never know, because when I was around 11 or 12 years old, I had to use it, but I didn't know it, so I couldn't use it. I think, for whatever reason, I don't know, my mom thought I was prepared for this moment, and I wasn't. My mom was somebody who was a caregiver to other people's kids throughout the day, and so she had other people's kids in her home, and there was a neighbor down the alley. We don't have alleys around here that much. There's a neighbor down the alley who was actually my PE coach who needed somebody to watch his baby boy. And my mom's like trying to figure it out. And she looks at me as an 11 or 12-year-old boy thinking, oh, Coy can do it. My word of advice is do not give your baby to those two boys right there because they're probably not prepared. Like, we're just not prepared. Jake says, I'm prepared. I was not prepared as an 11 or 12-year-old boy, but I went anyway because they told me to. And so I went into their house, and I remember the mom it felt like she just disappeared as soon as I walked into the house. And you already heard me say I avoided babies at all costs. And it's like a switch goes on. As soon as a parent leaves the house, it's like somebody turns on the switch of the baby crying. It's weird. I don't know how babies even know the difference. But as soon as the parents left the house, that baby was screaming its head off. I'm an 11-year-old boy. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to feed the baby. How do I feed a baby? I'm a man, first of all. I can't feed a baby like that. She didn't show me where the bottle was. I don't know what to do. I can't change a diaper. Like, I'm not changing a diaper at 11 years old. There's no way I am touching a little baby's poo-poo with my hands. It is not happening. That is so gross and disgusting. There's no way. And I'm thinking to myself, what do I do with this baby screaming its head off? I was about ready to scream my head off. Any parents ever been there? Like, your baby's screaming its head off, and you're like, I'm going to scream louder than you. I'm tired of you screaming. That's what I felt like, screaming, like, what am I doing here? And all I knew to do was to reach down and pick him up. That's all I knew to do. Bad news is it didn't help because I didn't know what the baby needed. But I'm convinced that that baby had already learned, that baby had already discovered that whenever the baby cries, mommy or daddy or whoever's caring for me will reach down to me. And I think to myself, it's kind of crazy to consider this, that the moment you came into this world, the most important thing, really, but the most important reach is the one that came down to you. And crying is how you called for it. Now, you may be thinking, Coy, I'm too young to have a baby. I don't have a baby. I never plan to have a baby. I'm not a baby. So why are you talking about babies so much? And I think I'd agree with you that none of you are babies. Although some of you act like it sometimes, including myself. You're not a baby, but here's the reality. You still have needs. You have needs in your life like a baby. You have needs. You have needs for security. You have needs for safety. You have needs for opportunity. You have needs for healthy relationships. You have needs for love. You have needs for forgiveness. You have needs for peace. You still have needs. And all of those needs are necessary for your health and growth into a person who's filled with strength and purpose. And you will struggle with all those needs until you realize, sort of like a baby, to cry out for the most important reach, which is the one that extends down to you. I'm telling you this because so many of us struggle for the majority of our life, holding in our cry, and believe that in reaching out into the wrong place, that the right reach will come back to us. And what I want to tell you tonight is there's some God that reaches down to you. There's a God that reaches down to you, and how you call out on that God is you cry out and you say, God, I need you. So we go back to the book of Psalms. In the book of Psalms, this writer is King David, and we know that he's not a baby, obviously. But as the story goes, we find out that the situation that he's in may be similar to feeling just as helpless as a baby. Because what he tells us is that he's worn out from constant attack from his enemies. And you're all like, what enemies? See, for us, we don't think of real enemies. We think of like emotional things that we're dealing with, which is true because anytime something external happens, it's what causes your internal to struggle. Did you know that like any internal struggle you have is motivated by an external struggle? But he's talking about an external struggle, and then we see his internal struggle because he's a king. He's a king, and he's fighting other nations, and they keep attacking him. You can go back and find his story in some of the other Old Testament books of the Bible where they just keep attacking and attacking and attacking and attacking his kingdom. And he's at the point where he's like, I'm not sure I can do this anymore. And then he kind of laments about it in verses 4 and 5. He describes his discomfort. I told you about it. He says, it's like a tight rope around my neck. It's like the devil's controlling the ocean that I'm swimming in, and it's about to drown me. Now, to grasp his emotion behind his words, I need to challenge you to imagine yourself nearly drowning. Imagine yourself nearly drowning. You have to take yourself and place yourself in the middle of the ocean. There's no raft. There's no boat. There's nobody else around. It's just you and the ocean swimming. Imagine yourself in the middle of the ocean and a storm is raging. There's waves everywhere. They're just pumping up and they're pumping down. And everywhere you look, there are waves. And you are growing tired from swimming in the middle of the ocean where you have no way out. And then all of a sudden, here comes this rogue wave and it crashes on your head and it causes you to go under the water because it's so powerful. And because it's so powerful, it tumbles you over. It tosses and turns you so that you don't even know the way to the surface. You don't know which way is up and which way is down because it's so dark under the water, you don't know where you are. And you start to panic a little bit. Like, I'm not going to make it to the top. This might be my last breath. And your heart starts to beat and you think, I've got to make it to the top. And so you start swimming as hard as you can to get to the surface. And when you finally make it at the last second and you get your mouth above the water and you take that breath, guess what happens? Another wave comes and it smacks you on top of the head again and it drags you under the water and starts the process all over again. And every time you fight to get back to the surface, another wave comes and pushes you back down again. And every time you go under, you wonder, is this the last? Like, is this going to destroy me, never to live again? You have to see yourself struggling in the middle of the ocean to understand the emotions behind the words that King David has given us. Strong words, like a difficult place. He's about to give up. Now, it's horrible to think about yourself nearly drowning. Brooklyn and I, in 2005, we were working at a church over near Melbourne, Florida. And every Tuesday, we would take our youth group in the summer to a surf day. I wish we could do that with all you guys, man. We're just like too many hours away. Maybe once this summer. But every Tuesday, we would take them to the beach for a surf day with our youth group. And students who live near the beach in Florida, they all claim to be surfers, but none of them are. Yeah, I've surfed before. I've surfed before. My dad has a surfboard. I've done it before. And then you get them in the water, and they can't even lay on the board without falling off. But we would take those teenagers. I did it selfishly because I wanted to surf. Brooklyn did it selfishly because she wanted to tan. So we'd take the students to the beach, and every Tuesday we'd have a beach day. And what would happen is I would end up in the water on my surfboard with maybe one other person who could surf, and all the other students would end up in the water just swimming. And I know you all live in Florida, but we're in Lakeland, and we don't go to the water that much. And so maybe some of you aren't as learned on undercurrents. Those things are real. It's like a tornado under the water just sucking you into it. And you would think that kids who live near the beach would understand a riptide. They don't. And so here I am on a surfboard over there having a good time, and here Brooklyn is with about 10 teenagers around them. Brooklyn's new to the ocean as well, and none of them realize they have been sucked into a riptide. Now, it doesn't pull you under, it just holds you where you are. So if you try to swim out of it, it's impossible. You can't do it. You can fight, and you can fight, and you can fight, but it's just going to pull you right back into it. And I had told Brooklyn, if you ever get into a riptide, you don't swim against it, you swim with it. Like you go parallel to the beach, you swim out of it, and then you come to the beach. Well, that message didn't get to all the teenagers. And there was one, I think, 6th or 7th grade girl who got sucked in, and she was drowning. I mean, drowning. And I wasn't a part of it to know exactly what happened, but Brooklyn said it was the most terrifying experience of her life because now she's the youth pastor about to be responsible for a little girl drowning. Nobody wants to hear the youth pastor come back and say, I'm sorry, she drowned, she's in a riptide. And so Brooklyn swims over and tries to help her, but she's so scared that she's not going to make it, that she's kicking and screaming, and she just uses Brooklyn as a ladder to climb up. Literally, just like starts climbing up Brooklyn's body, and Brooklyn had to actually push her away so she could not drown with her and calm her down enough to say, chill out, and then Brooklyn reaches down and saves the girl's life. She reaches down and saves this girl's life. Now, I have no idea what kind of dark waters you may be swimming in right now. I have no clue what they look like for you. But maybe right now in your life, you feel like you're drowning. Maybe right now you feel like you've been sucked under by the enemy and it's holding you down and you're not sure that you can make it. Now, most of us probably on the outside, nobody even knows the difference. But on the inside, you're terrified. And if that's you tonight, I want you to hear the words in verse 6. Because he says, in my distress, as I'm about to drown, I call upon the Lord. I cried out to my God for help. Did you hear that? I cried out. Like a baby, even though he's a grown man, it says he cries out to God for help. I'm here to convince you tonight that the most important reach in your life is the one when God reaches down to you. Because King David was way beyond his ability to handle the situation on his own. The only thing he could do to survive was to cry out to God. And when he cries out to God, God hears his cry, and God reaches down, it says, from the heavens, and he takes him and he lifts him out of the mighty waters. Anybody feel like you're stuck in the mighty waters? Some of you are. You feel like you're drowning, and the promise is the most important reach is the one that comes down to you to rescue you. In those moments when you want to fit in, but you feel left out. In those moments when you want to succeed, but you repeatedly fail. In those moments where you want peace in your home, but it's a constant war. In those moments where you want to please your parents, but it's never enough. In those moments where you want to feel loved, but you're tempted by lust. In those moments where you want to be brave, but you're living in fear. The most important reach is when God reaches down to you, because God rescues you from trouble and temptation and tragic experiences. God saves you from drowning in loss and loneliness and a lack of purpose. God lifts you out of the waters of anger and anxiety and a need to achieve. And all that you have to do is cry out to God, help me. Help me. Help me, God. Because I'm struggling. I'm struggling with my parents' divorce because I'm always stuck in the middle. I'm struggling. I feel worn out because everybody expects me to be perfect, and that's impossible. I'm struggling. I'm worn out. I feel like I'm drowning in drugs, but it's the only thing that numbs the pain. God, I don't even like myself anymore. Like, I'm depressed all the time. And I don't even know if I want to keep going in my life anymore. God says, in your distress, call upon my name. And I will reach down. And I will take you up. And I will move you from this place where you're too worn out to fight anymore, to a place of being strengthened to overcome. I know God wants that for your lives. I do. I'll never forget a time when I had to reach down to one of my daughters. I had to reach down. I was preaching on a Saturday night, and I believe she was around 2 years old. I preached the message on a Saturday night, and I came home from the service that night, and my family had already made it home to get ready for bed, and they had friends over, and they ordered pizza. I mean, that's one of the best, isn't it? Be with friends and have a pizza come to your house, J. Burns or Palace Pizza or whatever your favorite is, Sal's, I don't know, Marcos. And I came home, and they'd already eaten their pizza, and my youngest daughter was eating her pizza still. And we had this little ottoman. Do you all know what an ottoman is? I didn't learn these things until my father-in-law taught me because he works in furniture. An ottoman is one of those pieces of furniture you put your feet on while you're sitting on another chair. There was a square ottoman, and my daughter had climbed up on it, and everybody was talking. And I looked at my daughter, and she was on top of the ottoman on her hands and her knees, like in a dog position. And something just didn't feel right. I don't know what made me even look. Like, everybody was just talking, having a good time, and she was on her hands and her knees on the ottoman, and I thought, something's not right. And I looked down at my daughter, and her face is turning red. And the strange thing is I had just had training courses for the Heimlich maneuver, and I'm like, God, why are you doing this to me? Like, I guess I'm glad that you gave me the skills, but this can't be happening. I don't even know what she has in her mouth. A 2-year-old could have anything in their mouth. And so I pick her up, and I do what they taught me to do. I put her body on my arm, and I just start hitting her on the back. I'm not sure if you've ever been there before, but it feels like you have no time left, but it also feels like it's lasting forever. And in that moment, I honestly thought this is the last breath my daughter's going to take. I really did. She started turning red to purple. There was no air coming out. I was hitting as hard as I could without breaking my daughter's bones. Like, I was so terrorized in this moment that Brooklyn came over in panic as well. Like, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm doing everything I've been taught to do, and it's not working. And then Brooklyn does the one thing they tell you to never do, which is stick her finger in her mouth, which just lodges it deeper typically, right? But she sticks her finger in her mouth and swishes it through, and it gets the piece of cheese out of her mouth, and she lives. But the reason why I will never forget that moment with my daughter is because it all started because I reached down to her. I reached down to her. If I had not reached down to her, she would not have survived. And I am telling you, God is reaching down to you. And you can survive, but you don't just survive when you realize God reaches down to you. You end up thriving. I don't remember the first time that my parents reached down to me. I don't. I was a baby. But I will argue with you that the evidence is there. That they cared for me, that they fed me, that they loved me, that they bathed me. None of you will probably ever remember, check this out, the first time that God reaches down to you. You won't remember, because the first time that God reaches down to you is before you believe. God reaches down to you before you believe to draw you to God's self so that you will believe. And here's the amazing thing to me, is that even though we can't remember the first time that God reaches down to us, as a follower of God, I believe the evidence is there. And as followers of Jesus, I think we could tell you story after story after story after story where we would point back in our history and say, you know what? When I prayed and cried out to God, God reached down and God saved me. God saved me here, and God saved me here, and God saved me here. And you know what? I never thought about that before, but God saved me there. I was about to drown in all my sorrow. I was about to drown in all my fears. I was about to drown in all my terrors. I was about to drown in all my emotions, but God reached down and God saved me from the mighty waters. There is evidence in your life. Trust me, there's evidence in your life. You wouldn't be here today if God's grace wasn't working in your life. Like, God's the one that gives you breath. So there's evidence in your life that God has been reaching down to you from the moment you took your first breath. And so what I want to do tonight is I want to give you a chance to cry out to God right where you are. So stand with me, will you?